Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. And I've been saying that for 3 years now. I can't believe it. I appreciate everybody who's followed along for the past 3 years, just checking out my videos. I know there are plenty of other content creators out there. Board game in general isn't the biggest hitters on YouTube. So I do appreciate anybody who's ever tuned in and followed, subscribed, liked, whatever you've done in the last 3 years. I really appreciate you. And of course, you know why you're here. I know why you're here. You're probably new here just from seeing a top 10 thing. So welcome if this is your first time catching one of my videos. I hope you stick around. But if you don't, I at least appreciate you being here long enough to hear this little rattling off. Anyway, before we fully get into it, go ahead and just reiterate again that I put all 400 whatever games I've ever played into Pub Meeple. Picked this or that, this or that, this or that one day in the middle of January. A couple of hours worth of clicking which game at that moment, if they were put in front of me, which one would I want to play. And then that spat out a top 100. Well, actually, I think I ranked them all, but I took the top 100. I put them in my little spreadsheet. I tweaked them a little bit all the way on the back end. Nothing in the top 10 was tweaked, I don't think, at all. I don't even think anything in like the top 30. But on the back end, I might have moved a little bit up and down after all was said and done. I was like, no, I think this is better than that, whatever. But anyway, I did all that a month plus ago now, as we're rounding out the end of February. And this is the top 10 games as of mid-January 2025 of all 400 whatever board games I've ever played. These are my favorites. So let's go ahead and get into it without any further ado. I mentioned in the earlier videos that there were 11 new to the list games that didn't appear last year. At least they might have appeared the year before and years before that when I kept my own list but didn't do anything with them other than for my own perusal. But new games appearing on this list that weren't on last year's. If you went back and watched last year's top 50, 11 of them. We've already talked about 9 of them, so there's only two new games on this list, and one of them is new to the list overall. I just played it for the first time last year, and the other one is my number 10. My number 10 last year was not on the list due to oversight. Somehow it didn't get into my Pub Meeple filter. I don't know how it happened. I didn't realize it until I was filming my top 10. And actually, I think it was after I filmed my top 10 when I was doing my what fell off the list. And I was surprised that Keyflower had fallen off the list. And how did that happen? So I had to look through my list from Pub Meeple, and it was not on it. And so I was like, somehow it got filtered out. Keyflower, my number 10 favorite game of all time as of early 2025. I just really enjoy Keyflower. It's got unique kind of worker placement mechanics and auction mechanics, and they all revolve around your meeples that you've got hidden behind a screen. And they're in 3 main colors and then 1 green special color. Not really a wild color, but it's harder to get green. So if you can play the green, you've got more power. Because as soon as a meeple is either played on a tile or to auction for the tile, because at every round some tiles are going to be displayed out in front of you to auction into your village. If they're in your village, that's when you place your meeples on them, or you can visit neighbors' villages to take actions, because every tile is going to do different actions. In the end, you're just trying to generate resources in your village and then move them to delivery points to earn points. That's kind of the gist of the game. But you're either placing on meeples, 1 to 3 meeples, I believe it is, on tiles to take actions, or you're placing 1 to 3 meeples to bid for tiles in the middle to add to your village to have in the future. And as soon as any color meeple is played in any way on a tile, that's what colored meeples have to be played on that tile. So if I bid 1 red meeple, to bid for that tile now, you have to bid at least 2 red meeples. So that's why the green's more powerful, because they're harder to acquire. So you get more control using the green meeples. Otherwise, you got red, yellow, and blue, I believe, for your standard meeple actions. But not only that, at the end of every round, whatever meeples are played in your village are coming back to you. So if your opponents like the thing that you won a lot, they're going to pay villagers to go take that action on your tile. And you're going to get those meeples for future use. I just really love that play where the meeples are your workers. They're also kind of your money, because when you use them to bid, they're going away. Anything that's bid is just out of the game, back into the meeple bag. So just a lot of great thought, push and pull that goes into Keyflower. And I just really love that gameplay, that thought process, that management of your meeples, because you don't know what people have. Everybody's playing behind a screen. So you got to remember, when you put 2 red meeples over in the town, they've got at least 2 red meeples that you got to plan against in the future. But also, you're drawing more meeples out of the bag every round, depending on your placement and things like that. So it's just that mind game with the worker placement, with the auction mechanics, with trying to do the things in your village to get the points you need at the end of the game. And I just really enjoy Keyflower. I did play it this past year, or maybe it was late in 2023. Again, for the first time in a while, because again, I don't own this game. I don't remember if I said that. It's the only game in my top 10 and one of the few games in my whole top 50 that I don't own. So I've only played it a handful of times. I have a buddy who owns it, so I got to play it again recently-ish. And it just reiterated how much I really like Keyflower. My number 9, I believe, was new to the list last year, debuting at number 12. I might be wrong with that. It might have been on the previous list, but I don't think so. I think it was new to me in 2023. Number 12 last year, moving up 3 spots to number 9. It's the White Castle. Again, another game where you're really managing tight resource management, which is a thing I really like. But also it's got dice drafting. You're drafting from a common pool of dice of 3 colors. And the high dice are going to give you more actionability. If you take like the 6, you're going to have a 6 power of action that you can use on any white dice action spot, whether it's on your personal board or on the main board. And if it's to the main board, you're blocking that out, kind of like a worker placement action. And if it's on your board, you're the only one who can play there anyway. So you're fighting over not only the dice, but the spots where the dice can go. And if you're paying or drafting a high value die, I think you have to pay for it. And if you take a low value die, you're going to earn income from it, or vice versa. I don't remember. But I do know that if it's the lowest die on the little bridge, you get another action. So maybe you just take the low one so you can kind of get 2 actions, because that's really the crux of this game, is managing resources and then comboing as many actions as you can, because you've only got 3 or 4 rounds of 3 or 4 actions. Like, I think in total there are 12 actions in this game. And that's going to be a common theme for a lot of my games. I just really love tight action selection. I apologize in advance. You've heard this in the past. You're going to hear this moving forward on this list. But tight action selection, tight resource management are just things I really enjoy in gaming, and the White Castle really has that. So you're spending a couple actions where you're not doing much. You're gathering resources and getting ready for your big combo, assuming that die is still available on the board that you're looking at, or that space, or whatever, because there are people taking the cards off, which could change up those actions on the board. You're adding a little bit of an engine to your own personal board as you're taking those cards. Again, creating combos of actions. So I just really, really enjoy the White Castle for its action selection, dice drafting, resource management, and most importantly, for just trying to get the most out of every turn, because you're not going to get the most out of every turn. Eventually, you're going to be out of resources, or the spots are just going to be blocked. So I just love the crunchy thinkingness, trying to plan 2, 3, 4 turns in advance when you only have 12 actions to begin with. It's just a great, thinky puzzle that I really enjoy, the White Castle. And apparently I cannot count. As I get to my number 8, I realize I have 3 new to the list games. And this one is one I believe I played for the first time this past year too. Showed up on my favorite new to me plays from 2024 list that I put out, and has debuted all the way up at number 8, but not the highest debuting game because of my inability to count. So you'll see one more debut higher up here shortly. But my number 8 is Rococo. Rococo is a game about designing fashion for rich aristocrats. Not cats, Aristocats is a movie. Aristocrats who are going out into this ball, and they're going to watch fireworks, and you can get points for them watching fireworks. You get points for dressing them up. You get points for having more of your guests in certain areas of the mansion, in those various ballrooms. You get points for helping decorate the rooms. And none of that sounds intriguing to me as a concept. You know, I'm not a rich aristocrat. I don't care about fashion. It's so weird how much I enjoy this game, despite the theme. Because this game is another one where you're managing your action selection. You're managing your resources to do those things because you've got a handful of cards and you're playing a card down to take its action. And depending on its level, bronze, silver, or gold action, you're going to be limited in which actions you can take. And one of those actions is to draft more action cards because you're going to need those, obviously, to continue taking actions different. And each card's going to have a subsequent action on it as well, which could be gathering a resource or taking a different action or whatever the case is there. And the actions, there aren't that many action spots. There's, gather resources. There's sew up a gown or a suit and then sell it or give it to one of these aristocrats and put them into the ball where you're doing some area control to try to get the points for each room and the points for the spot you put them in potentially. And that spot, some of the spots even give you a resource back. Some of the spaces require you to use a gold worker to make an extravagant outfit in order for the guests to go into that specific spot on the board. It's a lot of neat things that I really enjoy. Again, just because of the tight action selection, resource management. It's got the area control, and everything you do is beneficial in some way or other, unless you're really playing poorly. So even if you don't do the exact thing you're looking for because you don't have the right card or somebody ahead of you just did that, you're still going to be able to do something that'll get you ready for the next thing you do. Okay, I'll just get some resources now, or maybe I'll just get this card that's still there, and that'll give me a thing in the next round. Or maybe I'll decorate the hall, and that'll give me points. So just a lot to manage, a lot of fun of dressing up people and sending them out to the ball. Rococo, I really enjoy this game. My number 8 last year moves up one spot to number 7. So good on it. I did play it again recently, and it did really drive down how much I enjoy this game. One of Stonemaier Games' first games, the ever popular Stonemaier games. This is my favorite from them. It is Viticulture. Specifically the Essential Edition. I haven't played the Standard Edition or anything. I've only played the Essential Edition with the Tuscany board. But I really enjoy Viticulture. It's a worker placement game where you're going around and running a vineyard. You're trying to plant, grapes into the ground so that way you can later cultivate them. And then even later than that, turn them into wine. You're appeasing various guests along the way who could give you more actions, a little bit of comboing maybe, or they can help you out if certain spots are blocked, because again, it's a worker placement game, so spots can get taken. So you've got to kind of race to those spots. Key to this game is definitely, getting grapes and turning them into wine and then selling the wine cards off. A lot of people get flack about the big decks of cards making it really random, and that is true. But I kind of like that because it's just like you're managing people taking spots. You're managing what you draw, and working around what you've gotten. It might not have been the best draw for you. So yeah, it could feel like a wasted turn to some people. And sometimes it is. But I try to make the best of it anyway. Because there are, especially on the Tuscany expansion, I believe, you can trade things. So if you got a couple bad cards, you can go to that trade space and trade it for, coins or whatever you need anyway to help you out. So there is some mitigation there for the bad draw. But in the end, I just like how relaxing it is. It's, it's a little kind of relaxing worker placement. You're putting the workers out in the spring, and they're doing spring actions. And then you kind of pass, save some workers for the fall, and then do some fall actions. I like that aspect of it too. The whole board's not available to you at any one time, so you got to manage what you're holding on to and what you're using now. Lots of key little tweaks to the standard worker placement to include the grande worker, who can go to a spot that's already occupied. So that way you can still get at least one action that you need to get no matter what else happens. But once that grande worker's placed, you don't have them until next round. I just like all those unique little elements on a nice, pretty relaxing game about making wine while you're drinking wine. I don't think I've ever played this while not having a glass of wine, too. So that helps, I guess. And that is my number 7, Viticulture. My number 6 was number 6 last year and has been in my top 5 forever. And it's must have such a lasting impact on my brain to still sit around, because I have not played this game in over 2 years. I guarantee if I pulled up my BG Stats app and looked up my last play of Russian Railroads, it'd probably be 2021, if I were to guess. I'm not going to do that, but I might do it after I'm done filming. And yet, Russian Railroads just hangs out around my top 5 year after year after year. Just because I really like how tight, like Viticulture, tight worker placement. No, Russian Railroads, tight worker placement. About building up railroad lines. And I really, really want to get Ultimate Railroads because it's got all the other expansions and add-ons and things. I'm check those out. But what I love about Russian Railroads, not only is how tight it is, but the reason why it's so tight is because as you're building up the railroads, you have to move the lesser railroads ahead before your better ones can come up behind. But there might not be enough spots to do that because it's that tight of a worker placement game that there's only like maybe 2 spots to move up your black railroads, your weakest ones, the first ones, the ones that lead the way, the ones you need to move to continue building up the stronger and stronger ones and get more and more points. And so if you take time doing other random actions, then you might lose out on that. And then you almost got yourself locked down. You're not going to be completely locked down. There are things you can do in the game for sure, but they might not be the best things because they've got the industry board too. And you can buy the engine cards and they can push your engine further, or you can flip them on the other side and build up your industry and push up the industry track, and that's going to unlock advantages and things for you. Also, you're racing to buy various conductors because those conductors can come to your board and give you specific action places. So that's a way to mitigate the board being so tight, is buying those conductors. Conductors require you to spend a coin, and coins are hard to come by in this game. I think there's only one spot that gives you coins naturally. But coins are great because A, they can buy the conductors, and B, you can use them as another worker, a free worker. Well, free, it's a coin, so I guess it's not free. But if you've got a stack of coins, now all of a sudden you don't just have your 3 or 4 workers. Now you've potentially got 8 workers in a future round. And that's really neat. I really like that aspect as well. Just Russian Railroad is such a fun, tight worker placement game that even though I haven't enjoyed it in a while, I've enjoyed it so much every time I played it that it just sticks around in my conscience and in my top 5-ish area. Speaking of top 5, my number 5 was number 4 last year, so dropped a spot to make way for a game that's still to come. But this game is a game that I discussed in the last episode, I believe, when I was talking about Altiplano. This is Orleans. Orleans is a bag building game where you're building your bag of different villagers that you're putting on your board combine them together, and then you can buy new villagers, or you can go travel around France, starting at Orleans, obviously, out to these other towns, and you can set up little hubbles there and collect things along the way as you go, and those things you can turn in for points, or because you need them to ward off the events that are going to happen at the end of every round that might require you to have food. So shout out, I guess, to Uwe Rosenberg, who invented the feed people mechanism that everybody loves or hates. Orleans has a little bit of that with some of the event cards that come out. Others are you can't place monks. Monks are kind of the wild cards. Or just different various actions along the way. But Orleans is just so good because there's only so many villagers depending on player count. So you're racing up the tracks to get those villagers, unlock the I think they're actually called the villagers. So you get the discs of workers, and if you race up certain tracks, you'll be the first one to collect villagers. Villagers become point multipliers based on, the things you have drawn out from the bag, based on how many you can draw each round. Putting them on, collecting things, moving up tracks, getting points, getting some resources. Usually they're like foodie resources. And everything eventually is going to get you points at the end of the game. All the while, there's going to be an ongoing event every round that you're going to be aware of because you flip it over the beginning round. And unless it's something that like literally is, you can't play monks during the round or something like that, you're going to know what it is, so you can keep an eye on it for the end of the round and make sure you've got the money or the food or whatever, or you just deal with the consequences of not being able to do it. It's probably the best bag builder. I mean, for me, it definitely is because I know it's coming up on my list. But for a lot of people, you don't hear many people talk about bag builders or deck builders as much as Orleans, and it's been in the top 100 on Board Game Geek for a long time, and well-deservedly, in my opinion. My number 4 is the final new game on this list. Brand new to me in 2024. Finished the year number 1 on my favorite new to me games from 2024. So if you've seen that video and remember what that was, you already know what this is. It is Revive. Revive is just such a great game that has everything I enjoy in games. It's got that action selection. You've got a handful of cards, not even really in your hand. You just put them on the side of the board. And you take one and you slide it up under the top spots or the bottom spots. Use the top or bottom abilities of the card you're using. You can end up with modifiers that when you match the colors up correctly, you'll also get that additional thing for just placing a card. But you don't have to place cards. Cards are kind of placement to get you resources, maybe additional actions, maybe additional things. But mostly they're just going to help you build resources. Because if you don't want to place a card and you want to take a different action, and each turn you get two actions. So that's cool. You can like combo your action together before somebody else does the thing. But for other actions, you can use your resources to venture out on the board, because what you're doing in the game is basically, it's a frozen wasteland and you're trying to re-inhabit it. So you're flipping over the frozen tiles once you have the right resources to do it, when you explore, to see what's there. And doing that gets you, things, but you got to pay the resources to do it. So it's that back and forth of managing the resources, managing the actions, and kind of racing to be the one to do it, because you want the goods that come from having done that, the points, the extra cards, so whatever the case is. But once they're flipped over and you expand more and more of the board, then you can start dropping your people out there and start developing the world. And when you drop people out there in the cities that are there, they're going to venture further out to get towards those end-game objectives on the corner of the board. And each person on your player board is going to unlock specific abilities on these unique player boards. Everybody's got unique player boards, their own special powers, but none of them are overly powerful that I've run into. But they give everybody a different play that they're going for, unlocking different abilities, different advantages for certain actions. So you want to get the people out into the cities so you free up your board more and collect those things. Or you can build buildings out And the buildings are going to give you adjacency. Whatever you put them on, whatever's adjacent to it, you're going to get those. If it's a lake, you're going to collect something from that lake. Or you're going to move up the various tracks. There are 3 tracks you're moving around. And the further you get up those, the more things you're going to unlock, the more extra abilities you're going to unlock from the common display. And then you can spend your energy once around to utilize those special abilities. So again, it's a use special thing that you were able to acquire from doing those actions and unlocking, your spots. I just really enjoy Revive because of that. Again, the same as I've mentioned numerous times in this, just the management of your actions, your resources, your abilities, and trying to manage your turns in the right order and race out to do things before somebody else does. Get those end game goals, get the points, get the resources, do what you need to do to win. And Revive's got a unique solo mode that's a beat your own score type, but you've got an action cube that's going to move up every time you play a card. It's going to move up once. Every time you reset, basically, it's going to move up twice. And you can only move up the track 20 times. So you're just racing yourself, basically, to get the most out of your turns and get the best score you can. And I usually don't like beat your own score solo games, but this one in the box is great on its own. It feels like a multiplayer game, even though it literally is you're playing by yourself to beat your own best scores. And I've recently downloaded a fan-made solo version that I want to check out too that replicates playing against somebody else. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out in the future. But Revive, brand new to the list, debuting at my number 4. That's how much I enjoyed my plays of this game. All right, we've done it. We've made it to my top 3. And if you've been here last year, you've probably got an idea of what they might be. If you've been keeping track, a couple of the games that have been on my list for a while, they're still there. Plus the one that I believe debuted last year at number 2. From my favorite designer, fallen just one spot to number 3 for no real good reason. Just a matter of how they pulled out this year. But number 3 is The Castles of Burgundy from Stefan Feld, who is my favorite designer. I enjoy almost every game he's made that I've played. But The Castles of Burgundy, far and away, my favorite. And again, it just comes down to the tight management of what you're doing. But in this game, you're not managing a whole lot. You're rolling 2 dice and then using those 2 dice each turn to build up your area, your board, your mat, your whatever you want to call it. I've got the big box of everything. So I've got like 40 different maps, layouts. But in the end, you're just drafting, using your dice from the common pool of tiles, buildings for your village around your castle, and putting them into a hold. And you can only hold 3 tiles at a time. And you can use the dice also to take them from your hold and put them into your village. And again, you gotta mind the dice numbers. But they can be mitigated. You can use helpers to mitigate the numbers up and down. Per each villager spend, you can add or subtract 1 to the die roll. And the buildings you play out are going to do different things. If it's a river, a water tile, you're going to move up the player order track. You're going to collect goods from the board that you can later sell for money. A lot of the village tiles are going to do their own special thing. The yellow ones have ways to either break certain rules of the game or in-game scoring. So I like getting those a lot too, because I like having the points and the ability to break the game, basically. You can put mines in your game, and then every round, at the start of the round, you're going to get coins from your mine, because it's hard to get money in this game, but with the money, you can buy from the black market on your turn. And those are basically every tile that's in the game coming out randomly into that black market. So even if you miss it in the main board, if you've got 2 coins, you can buy it from the black market. But coins aren't easy to get in this game. And basically, you're just building up your village. You're racing to be the first one to fill in areas. As you fill in areas, you're going to get points. If you fill in every green, every animal, if you got every animal tile, every farmland is covered in animals, and you're the first one to do it, you pick up the special points, I guess, tile for being the first one to fill that area. So you're going to get those points. And the second person to do it will get the next tile for lesser points. It's just a lot of that racing, the management of resources, die rolling. I don't normally like die rolls, but I'm okay with like drafting style. As long as I'm not doing something and then hoping for the roll to let me succeed or help me do it or whatever. If it's roll the die and then see what can I do with what I have, I'm okay with that. So I just like that, the dice drafting, the dice usage. The fact that there's 2 around, that's it. I mean, you're playing for a while. I think there's, 5 or 6 rounds of 5 turns. So you're getting 25, 30 actions in the game. Each of those actions is going to be 2 actions, basically, because you got 2 dice at your disposal. But it's just that management of all those things going on to build up your village around your castles. And try to get points. Like most stuff on Feld games, everything you do is going to get you points, whether it's now or at the end game or both. And I always enjoy that in a Euro. I don't like feeling like some of my turns are wasted. You know, it could happen in this game. Maybe you've got to use a dice just to get some helpers. But guess what? Those helpers are going to help you later when, again, you need to mitigate your rolls. Good thing you did that earlier. So, the Castles of Burgundy, my number 3 favorite game of all time from my favorite designer. Number 2, for a long time, was my number 1 favorite game of all time. Anytime anybody asked, I immediately said Concordia. Last year was number 3, so flip-flop with Castles of Burgundy, again, based on just Pub Meeple, and the fact that I've played the solo. It's one of my favorite solo modes of any game ever. I don't know if that's because I like the solo mode a lot, which I do, because it's a solo mode where every action you do is the action your opponent's going to do. You know on that card what you're going to do and what your opponent's going to do. So it's your choice to give your opponent's actions based on your action. And I really enjoy that. But I don't know if it's helped by the fact that I've always loved Concordia anyway, or like the solo mode's that good. But anyway, in Concordia is the game that is trading in the Mediterranean. It's card management. You've got a hand of cards. You're going to play a card. You're going to take the action on the card. And then it's going to sit there. And then your next turn, you're going to play a card. Take the action on the card. Play a card. Eventually, you're going to run out of cards. Which means you can't take an action other than take your cards back. The more cards you take back, the more money, income you're going to earn. So you don't want to always be like, play a card because I like that action, take it back. Play a card, I like that action, take it back. Because A, you're going to be wasting half your turns. And B, you're going to benefit nothing from it other than taking the same action, which is going to be impossible in the game because you're managing all the resources to take those actions anyway. Because you're collecting resources from your settlements around the board, you're going out and you're buying houses in certain cities on the board which produce one of the 5 elements, not elements, but resources in the game. And you're going to need those resources to go settle somewhere else and settle somewhere else. Or use them to buy more cards for your hand because these action cards are driving your game. And there's an action market out there. And each card's got its cost, plus based on where it is on the market slot, an additional cost. So you're using your resources to generate your coverage on the board because that's going to generate you resources whenever anybody produces in those zones. So you definitely want to diversify your land area so that way you're always generating resources whenever anybody needs a resource, because one of the actions is to literally produce in an area and collect that resources that area produces, that area is known for. But everybody's got a settlement there also gets whatever their settlement produces. So you're managing that around the board because you need those resources to go around the board and collect these cards that are your action cards. But not only action cards, they've each got a specific god Roman god that they're appeasing. And the more of those gods you collect, and the more you do the things that god likes to do, you're going to get that much more points at the end of the game, because every one of those gods are going to multiply by however many times you say settled a different province. So if I've settled 11 provinces and I've got Decia or whichever god it is, like I've got 5 of those cards in my hands, I'm going to get 55 points when it comes to the in-game scoring when I get to that god. 11 provinces, 5 of the cards for that god, 55. So you're just trying to get out there and do these things. And I've always really enjoyed again, it's the managing of the resources, the tight action selection. You've got to manage what's in your hand and on your resource board, because you can only hold so many resources anyway. You've got to put each one in its own spot on your board. So it's that back and forth, that push and pull, that planning ahead and hoping somebody doesn't thwart your plan, or you have to divert. Geez, English bad. You're going to have to come up with a new plan on the fly. But there's always something to do, because there's just a multitude of options out there. Even if, maybe I'll just collect cards now and get some income. Or maybe, okay, I'll just go to that province instead, and because you took the one I was eyeballing. So I've just always enjoyed Concordia since whenever it came out. I've got every map ever, I think. Maybe I might be missing one map pack. All the expansions. I really enjoy getting this one to the table. I need to do it more, but like I said at the beginning of this ramble, the Solitaria mode does the job as well. So I don't even have to always get it to the table with other people and still get an enjoyable game of Concordia. So that's why it's been my favorite for a long time. It's fallen to number 2. I think a couple of years ago. Last year was at number 3 when Castles of Burgundy debuted at number 2, because I played that one a lot. Back up to number 2. Could be back to number 1 next year. I don't see it falling for a long time, just because I've loved it that long and always enjoy playing it. But number 1 debuted, I think, at number 1, or maybe it debuted at number 2 a couple of years ago on my first list of these. Back to number 1 this year after being there last year. My newest favorite game of all time is Ark Nova. I really like Ark Nova. I knew I'd like it from the moment I heard what it was. It's action management. You've got 5 action cards on this track, for lack of a better word, of various powers, 1 through 5. When you play it at level 5, it's going to give you that much more powerful of an action than if it's at level 1 or 2. So you want to kind of work them on the track, because after you play that action, it's going to move back to the number 1 slot and everything's going to slide forward. So you've got this little treadmill effect of your action cards, and everybody's got the same action cards from the start. I've got the expansion. They've got variable action cards. They're still the same basic actions, but they've each got their own little addendum to those special actions. Also, there are certain places where once you get various of your tracks up the board, or you cover up certain things on your board, you're going to be able to upgrade those actions and make them stronger, more powerful, unlocking other additional abilities to you. And all you're doing in this game is making a zoo. I like zoos. I like animals. Yeah, it could have been, I'm sure, some other theme. It's not super theme invested, but it is. You do build up certain animals into your zoo. You need to get those pens. One of your actions is to build. You build into your zoo these pens, and the pens are used to hold animals. And once you have an animal in the pen, once you play any animal out of your hand, you pay for its cost, and you got to flip over the pen to say, hey, there's an animal in that pen now. You can't put a different animal in that pen. That pen is occupied by an animal. You don't mix and match. I mean, some animals you can. That's actually in some of the cards too. A lot of the herbivore cards say you can put this in a pen with another herbivore, and that's cool. That's neat. That's a game aspect that's included. But you're not going to put a carnivore in with an herbivore. not going to put gazelles down and then be like, oh, put the lion in that pen now. No, you need a new pen. So you got to manage that. You're going to have sponsor cards. Sponsors are going to help you do different things. You can get money from other people doing things. And in the end, you're trying to conserve. You're racing up conservation because there are two tracks. There's your appeal track for how appealing your zoo is, represented literally by a ticket icon. People are paying tickets to come to your zoo. And then every reset break, you're going to generate income based on how appealing your zoo is. So the more appealing it is, the more income you're going to have, because money's pretty tight in this game up until the later rounds. And that's one of my gripes. As much as I love this game, if there's a late reset round where you generate like 40 money, then somebody ends the game, like that money is basically wasted. And I wish something was included in the game, even if it's 1 point for every 10 money. I wish there was something that made money more useful late, because it's easier to get late because you're generating more of it. But then it just sits there at the end of the game. I've had so many games where like, wow, if, these 50 coins did anything for me, like I'd feel better about it. But that's a minor gripe, But basically the other track is the conservation track for how much conservation activities you're doing. Are you sending things back to the wild? Are you, you're showing that you really care about apes. I say apes a lot because I'm an ape fan. Like the gorilla is my favorite animal. So I try when I can, if I get the cards for it. I love trying to build an ape zoo. But if you did that, and you did it enough, you're going to get a bunch of conservation points towards having done that. And as you move along the conservation track, you're going to unlock different benefits and abilities if you're the first one to do it. But also, once your two tracks cross, that triggers the end of the game, and everybody gets one last turn. And then you'll trigger any in-game scoring cards you've generated to add to that. So it's a little bit of timing about when that game, because if you're the one who crosses the paths, but you only do it by 1 point, and then you're done. Your game is over, other than like any in-game scoring you have. But your two opponents can also do their actions and end up winning because they had just a better build for that final turn. So I really enjoy especially the treadmill of action cards, and the fact that you can upgrade them, but you're not going to upgrade all of them. You're unlocking different abilities on your board as you open up different things, but again, you're not going to be able to do all the things because every action you do, there's a requirement for an upgraded card ability, and again, you can't upgrade them all, so you're going to be locked out of something at some point in the game, maybe multiple somethings depending on your choices in the game, or if you just didn't get things unlocked. I enjoy that. I really like Ark Nova a lot. I like the theme. I like the tight, again, usage of money. There's no really other resources in the game. The money is real tight until it isn't, and the action choices, that little treadmill of actions where like I really need to do this thing, which means I need to get it up here, which means I have to do this other thing that's in the way now, and try to get the best benefit out of doing that. Ark Nova, a lot of fun. If you haven't checked it out, it's long. It's about an hour per player, plus a long teach too. There's a lot of iconography, a lot of things to learn, but once you've learned them, they're not overly complex. Like you understand the icons and what they mean and how they interact. So a bit of a learning curve, a long play, generally an hour per player, but I think it's well worth it. Ark Nova, my number one favorite game, second year running, and we'll see what happens next year. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this top 10. Give me a thumbs up for liking it, for being here this long. And of course, subscribe below if you haven't already. You can catch more of my videos in the future. I do various top 10s, reviews, general board gaming, and occasionally non-board gaming content based on just what I feel like talking about that day. I try to put out one video a week, and so this is mine now. No, just kidding. This is my anniversary. I will have another video out this week, or I should. So the rare double tap here. February 28th, celebrating my 3rd year anniversary of the channel. with yet another top 10 favorite games of all time. I'll be back next year at the same time with this list again. But also, until then, I'll have 50 odd videos along the way. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Orleans is the deck building. I did that last time too. It was in my blooper reel for my top 50, I believe. So here we are again.